There are children born into the world, and then there are children who arrive from somewhere else. No one ever talks about the second kind, because to speak of them is to admit something followed them here. The town had no official name on most maps, just a fading road sign, half rusted, half fallen, as if even metal wanted to forget. People lived quietly there, not happily, not peacefully, just quietly. Like residents of a place that had learned long ago that asking questions only made things worse. No one locked their doors, not because they felt safe, but because locks never stopped anything that mattered. And at the edge of this town sat a house, old, still, watching. The first scream in that house wasn't Elizabeth's. It belonged to her grandmother. Records said she died of illness. The neighbors said she died of fright. Her husband swore she died staring at the ceiling, pointing at something only she could see, begging it not to take her daughter. That daughter would later become Elizabeth's mother, and she would spend her whole life pretending she didn't understand what her mother meant. Rain battered the hospital roof the night Elizabeth was born. Lightning struck twice, not near the building. Babies cry for milk. Elizabeth didn't. She cried only once during her first year of life. That night, her mother woke suddenly at 3:13 a.m. The baby monitor hissed with static, then whispering. Her mother rushed to the crib. Elizabeth lay still, staring upward, arms reaching into empty air as if someone invisible held her hands. The whispering stopped. Elizabeth turned her head slowly toward her mother and frowned, not like a baby, like someone interrupted. Years passed. The town forgot the storm. The hospital forgot the silence. But the house remembered. Elizabeth grew into a beautiful child with pale skin and eyes too calm for her age. She didn't throw tantrums. She didn't misbehave. She didn't act out. She simply watched. Other children played. Elizabeth observed. Other children laughed. Elizabeth listened. Teachers described her as polite but unsettling. Neighbors described her as sweet but strange. Animals described her as danger. Dogs whimpered when she passed. Cats arched their backs. Birds abandoned trees near her window. One afternoon, her brother Ben found her sitting in the backyard, staring at an anthill. He watched quietly. She didn't move for 10 minutes. Then she whispered, "They don't know they're alive." She turned slowly, smiled. That's why it's easy. The next morning, the anthill was crushed, not stepped on. Crushed. As if something heavy had pressed down, slowly, deliberately. Elizabeth began talking in her sleep when she was 6. Not mumbling, speaking clearly, full sentences, but not in her voice. Her mother heard it first. She stood outside Elizabeth's bedroom door at midnight, listening to her daughter whisper fluently in a language she had never heard before. Low, rhythmic, almost chanting. Her mother pushed the door open. Silence. Elizabeth lay still, eyes closed, but smiling. The truth might have stayed hidden forever, if not for the loose floorboard. Ben discovered it accidentally while chasing a toy car across the hallway. The board tilted, revealing a thin crack beneath. Inside, a box. Old, wooden, locked. He shouldn't have opened it, but children are curious. And curiosity is what darkness feeds on. He found the key taped underneath the box. Inside were photographs of people he didn't recognize. All of them were family. All of them had the same expression: fear. Under the photos lay medical documents, psychiatric evaluations, handwritten notes, diagnosis after diagnosis, hallucinations, delusions, auditory manifestations, violent compulsions. Every file belonged to someone in his bloodline. At the bottom sat a journal, his mother's handwriting. He flipped it open. First page. It followed me from my mother. It wants one of my children. Ben didn't hear Elizabeth step behind him. He only felt her breath near his ear when she whispered, "You weren't supposed to see that." That was the moment Ben knew, not suspected, not imagined, knew. His sister wasn't alone. Some families pass down heirlooms. Some pass down wealth. This family passed down something else, something patient, something ancient, something that had waited generations for a child who would finally say yes. That night at dinner, everything seemed normal. Their father joked, their mother smiled, Stacy talked about school. Elizabeth sat quietly, watching them all. Ben noticed something then. No matter who spoke, Elizabeth's eyes never followed their voices. They stayed fixed on empty space beside the table, as if someone sat there, listening with her. Later that night, Ben checked the journal again. A new sentence had appeared on the last page. Fresh ink, still wet. "It's almost ready." Behind him, Elizabeth giggled. Some evils break into a home. Some are invited, and some are born inside. Ben would soon learn which one his sister was, because the next morning, the first body would be found. There is a moment in every true horror story when fear stops being a feeling and becomes proof. For Ben, that moment arrived the next morning. It began with screaming, not the dramatic kind from nightmares. Real screaming, raw, animal, uncontrolled. Ben woke instantly. His heart pounded before his mind caught up. He ran toward the sound, his mother's voice, coming from the backyard. The grass was wet with morning dew, and in the center of it lay the neighbor's dog, bent wrong, still warm, eyes open, watching nothing. Their mother fell to her knees beside it, shaking. What could do this? No blood trail, no footprints, No sign of struggle, just silence. And standing by the fence, Elizabeth, barefoot, watching. Ben would remember her expression for the rest of his life. Not shock, not fear, not guilt, interest. Like a scientist observing an experiment, she tilted her head slowly, studying the body. Then she whispered softly, "It stopped moving." Their mother turned sharply. "Elizabeth, go inside." Elizabeth didn't move, didn't blink, didn't breathe visibly. "Why?" she asked calmly. "It's not using it anymore." Children don't talk like that, not unless someone teaches them or something. Later, inside, their mother scrubbed Elizabeth's feet in the sink. Too hard, as if she could wash something invisible away. "Were you outside last night?" she asked quietly. Elizabeth nodded. "Who let you out?" "It did." Her mother froze. Water continued running. "Who is it, sweetheart?" Elizabeth looked toward the hallway, smiled. "The tall one." The glass slipped from their mother's hands and shattered in the sink. Ben heard everything. He wasn't supposed to. But fear sharpens hearing. That phrase burrowed into his mind. The tall one. He didn't know why, but he pictured something thin, something folded wrong, something that had to duck to fit inside rooms. That night, he saw it, or thought he did. He woke suddenly, sensing movement. His door stood slightly open. The hallway beyond was dark, except for one thing. A shadow, long, impossible, stretching across the wall as if cast by something that wasn't there. The shadow moved, slowly, and though Ben couldn't see what cast it, he knew where it was going. Elizabeth's room. Elizabeth's room. The whisper lessens. After that night, Elizabeth began changing faster. She spoke less to her family and more to the empty corners. Her lips moved when no one was near. Sometimes she nodded, sometimes she laughed. Once, she apologized. "I'll do better next time." Stacy noticed too. She tried asking her sister who she talked to. Elizabeth answered honestly, "The one who lives here." "Who lives here?" Elizabeth pointed to the walls. "All of them." Stacy stopped asking questions after that. Narrator. Children lie, but they rarely lie about the unseen, because imagination invents monsters. It doesn't invent rules, and Elizabeth was following rules. The second sign didn't die. It survived long enough to speak. 3 days after the dog, Mrs. Keller from next door collapsed on her porch. Paramedics said stroke. But Mrs. Keller kept repeating one sentence while they lifted her onto the stretcher. "The little girl told me when." They asked who. Her trembling finger pointed toward the yard. Elizabeth stood there, smiling. Mrs. Keller died in the ambulance. The journal returns. That night, Ben checked the journal again. Another new sentence had appeared, ink still fresh. "She listens well." Ben's hands shook. "Mom," he called softly. No answer. He turned the page. More writing, not his mother's handwriting. Long, jagged, childlike. "I like her." Ben dropped the journal. behind him. A voice whispered, "So do I." Elizabeth stood in the doorway. The promise. She walked slowly into the room, barefoot, silent. Her eyes never left his. "It says you're the curious one," she told him. Ben tried to speak, couldn't. "It wants to know if you'll be good." "Good," he croaked. Elizabeth nodded gently. Still, quiet, like the dog. She leaned closer, close enough that he could smell dirt in her hair. "It says if you are," she smiled wider, "you won't feel it." Their mother saw the change too. Mothers always do. She began locking Elizabeth's door at night, praying louder, sleeping less, watching her daughter like someone guarding a cage, not a bedroom. One evening she grabbed Elizabeth's shoulders and demanded, "What do you want?" Elizabeth answered instantly, "To stay." "Stay where?" Elizabeth's gaze shifted past her mother's shoulder. "Here, with it." Their mother's face drained of color, because she finally understood something she had spent years denying. The thing that haunted her childhood hadn't left. It had waited for Elizabeth. Some spirits haunt places, some haunt people, but the worst kind haunt bloodlines. On the third night after the dog died, the knocking started, inside the walls, not rats, not pipes, knuckles, slow, intentional. Elizabeth sat upright in bed, listening, smiling, and then she knocked back. When you knock on a wall, you expect an echo. Elizabeth got an answer, because something knocked back twice, and in that moment, it knew her name. Every haunted place has a center, a heart, a mouth. In that house, it was the attic. The knocking didn't stop. It continued through the night, inside the walls, above the ceiling, behind the floors. But at exactly 3:13 a.m., it changed. It became footsteps, slow, measured, heavy enough to bow the ceiling slightly with each step. Ben lay frozen in bed, eyes wide, counting each creak above him. 1, 2, 3. Then silence, right above his head. Something stood there, listening. Across the hallway, Elizabeth sat upright in bed, smiling at the ceiling. Morning came gray and cold. Their mother looked worse than she had the night before. She hadn't slept. Her hands trembled when she poured coffee. Ben finally spoke. "Mom, what's in the attic?" The mug slipped slightly in her grip. She didn't answer, didn't look up. "Mom." Slowly, she whispered, "Nothing you need to see." From the table, Elizabeth giggled. The attic had always been locked, not boarded, not sealed, locked. The key hung on a nail above the kitchen doorway, always there, always visible, always forbidden. Their mother had one rule more important than all others: never open the attic. Not don't go inside, not don't play there, never open it, as if opening it would wake something. That afternoon, the key was gone. Their mother tore through the house looking for it. Drawers slammed, closets opened, boxes overturned. Her breathing grew faster with every passing minute. "Elizabeth," she said sharply, "have you seen the attic key?" Elizabeth sat on the floor coloring, without looking up. It wanted it. Silence. "Who wanted it?" her mother whispered. Elizabeth pointed upward. The sound came immediately, a single step above them, heavy, deliberate. That was when their mother broke. Her voice cracked as she grabbed Ben and Stacy and pulled them close. "Listen to me," she said. "Whatever you hear tonight, whatever you see, you do not leave your rooms." "Why?" Stacy whispered. Their mother swallowed, because she finally accepted the truth she'd run from her whole life. Because it knows we noticed it. Fear changes when it gains direction. Before that moment, they were afraid of something. Now, they were afraid of someone. That night, the air felt thick, heavy, like the house had lungs and was breathing slower than usual. At 3:13 a.m., the attic door opened. No one touched it. It opened anyway. Ben heard it from his room. A long, slow... He held his breath, listened, footsteps descending. Not walking, dragging. Ben couldn't stop himself. Curiosity overpowered terror. He slid from bed and opened his door just enough to see the hallway. Darkness, stillness, then movement. At the far end, near the attic ladder, something unfolded. Not stepped, unfolded. Like a shape too tall had been bent in half and was slowly straightening. Ben saw only pieces, a shoulder where no shoulder should be, an arm too long, a head that tilted sideways, too far. Then Elizabeth stepped into view beneath it, looking up, smiling. She spoke softly, not frightened, not surprised, familiar. "I knew you'd come down." The shape twitched. A sound came from it, wet, like air passing through something hollow. Elizabeth nodded as if listening. "Yes," she whispered. "I told you. They're almost ready." Ben's stomach dropped. "They?" The thing leaned closer to her, its head bent until it nearly touched hers. And though Ben couldn't see its face, he heard it breathe. Elizabeth turned, slowly. Her eyes met Ben's through the darkness, and she smiled wider than he had ever seen a human smile stretch. "You weren't supposed to wake up." The thing behind her stopped breathing. Predators don't chase prey that's already frozen. They wait to see if it runs. Ben slammed his door, locked it, backed away. His hands shook so badly he couldn't even pray. Outside his room, footsteps approached. Not Elizabeth's. He could tell by the weight, slow, heavy, patient. They stopped at his door. Something scratched the wood once, twice. Then Elizabeth's voice, "It wants to see you." Across the hall, their mother stood awake. She had heard everything. Her eyes were filled not with confusion, but recognition, because she knew that sound. She had heard it once before, when she was a child, the night her own mother died. She whispered to herself. It chose her. Her hands trembled violently. It finally. The first disappearance morning arrived. Quiet. Too quiet. Ben opened his door slowly. The hallway was empty, the attic ladder hung open, and Stacy's bedroom door stood wide, her bed empty. Their mother screamed her name, searched every room, closets, bathroom, backyard. Nothing. No footprints, no signs of struggle, no sound, just silence. Elizabeth sat at the kitchen table eating cereal. Calm, peaceful, satisfied. Milk dripped slowly from her spoon. "Where's Stacy?" their mother cried. Elizabeth chewed, swallowed, then answered simply, "Upstairs." Their mother's voice shook. "In the attic." Elizabeth shook her head. "Not anymore." Some doors lead to rooms, some doors lead to places, and some lead to mouths. Stacy had opened the wrong one, and now the house was hungry.